And we are live. Good morning, everybody. It's your favorite truck driver in the whole wide world. Truck driver in the whole wide world is Bitcoin Daddy. Hey guys, could you actually turn that down some? Thank you. Hey guys, could you actually turn that down some? All right. All right, we are good to go, folks. We are good to go. It's another beautiful morning here in Leominster, Massachusetts. It is an amazing day for Bitcoin. It's an amazing day for the people involved in Bitcoin. It's an amazing day for freedom. Today we have RFK Jr. is dropping out of the race and putting all of his support under Donald Trump. Folks, this is the dream team of politics and the Bitcoin. Folks, you have to understand, look at Trump, look at who he surrounds himself with, and look at their positions on the Bitcoin. Everyone on his team is pro-Bitcoin. Everyone surrounding him is pro-Bitcoin. The whole entity is pro-Bitcoin. Now we have news. Russia, the government of Russia, is literally ordering, because that's how Russia works, ordering the creation of 2 exchanges for cryptocurrencies in Russia. Not that Russia's a good place. Right? Russia is lead from the top. That's just how it is. And Russia is a lot like China without the wall. Right? Russia's like China light. Right? Not as much freedom as you'd want, but not as controlling as China. But in China, CZ is now in the halfway house. CZ gets fully, CZ from Binance is halfway out of prison. He's in a halfway house. Now, the important part of that is as soon as he's fully out, folks, CZ, from what I heard, is on a mission to personally push the price of Bitcoin up and try and crush Coinbase. CZ has a mission to crush Coinbase. And he's going to do it. He's going to do it simply because what he's going to do is let the real price of Bitcoin be reflected on the largest global exchange out there. There's going to be an arbitrage, you know what I mean. if the price of freaking Bitcoin is $90,000 on Binance, but only 60,000 on Coinbase because they're limiting retail access. Coinbase is going to shut down. Coinbase is going to shut down because they know they'll get liquidated like that. Like that. So they're going to shut down. But they're not going to let you transfer your coins off. See, Coinbase's new job is they are the enforcement platform for the SEC and the Democrat agenda, because they are the most heaviest, referenced when it comes to price. They have like 65% of the authority of price realization with all of the other price aggregate factors. So they're heavily weighted. Like Gemini probably maybe 11, 12%. Kraken maybe 8, well, maybe another 11 or 12%. But most of price discovery is from Coinbase's price. That's why when the price runs up on Coinbase, they shut down. Oh, we're having issues. We're overloaded. No, you're not, you son of a bitches. You guys have an expandable, you guys have an expandable processing setup where the higher the demand, the higher their system expands. So you shutting down is a choice. It's like shutting down the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange with too much price fluctuations. Too many people are selling, so we'll shut it down, let it cool off. So it's not an open market, right? It's a controlled market. That's why I've been telling everyone, number one, click the link under here and join Caleb and Brown. Caleb and Brown don't play that shit, folks. Caleb and Brown will send you your coins. Caleb and Brown does not give a flying fuck about controlling the price. They're a natural over-the-counter. And that's the difference. An open market exchange doesn't shut down. Right? Your grocery store is an open market exchange. When they run out of bananas, they run out of bananas. They don't shut this fucking supermarket down because they ran out of fucking bananas. Right? That's an open market. It's true, though. It's you have to understand. Brian Armstrong, you little weasel motherfucker, you let this happen. You created an icon. You could have been somebody other than being somebody's bitch. Because right now, you're somebody's bitch. Brian, you're a fucking disappointment. You claim to fight for the fucking cryptos. You claim to be this free market. Well, how about you turn your fucking exchange into a free market exchange? Quit hiring ex-fucking CIA agents. How about you try that, Brian? How about you hire some real crypto people that care about the people in crypto? You fucking lying piece of shit. You need to learn from Jesse over at Kraken. You need to learn from the Winklevoss twins. Right? You have ruined your fucking reputation in cryptos. No one looks to you as a leader anymore. Oh no, you're somebody's bitch. You're the government's bitch now. You fucking limp-wristed fucking bitch. Oh, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a little upset at Brian. What a wasted opportunity. What a wasted fucking opportunity. You lousy little bald-headed bitch. It is, if money's so important to you that you will compromise other human beings, you're a piece of shit. That's what you are. That's just how it is, folks. That's why Caleb and Brown. Folks, you want an honest company. You want to deal with pro Bitcoiners. Caleb and Brown. That's it. This is it. Oh, all right. I'm off my Coinbase rant. It's, folks, we have the adoption of Bitcoin. Folks, I've been on calls. There are corporations, I mean, huge corporate. Look at Sony. Sony just announced they're launching a layer 2 on Ethereum. Sony is launching a layer 2 on Ethereum. Folks, do you think Sony is doing this because they don't think this is the future? Think about this. You're the head, or you're on the board of Sony, and you see Ethereum, as a network to plug into. Ethereum and other blockchains are going to replace, folks. When I say this, it's going to sound odd, but it's true. Ethereum and other blockchain networks are going to replace cable. They're going to replace YouTube. They're going to replace internet service providers. Yes, a perfect example is Theta. Folks, Theta is going to eat YouTube's lunch unless the leadership of YouTube is changed out. All right? It's changed out. And if YouTube was smart, they'd launch a second layer on Theta. They'd launch a second layer on one of these decentralized, and they'll do it. YouTube's not going to go away, folks. YouTube investors and Google's going to get changed, folks. Google's getting their asses handed to them through AI right now. Google, Apple, all these big boys, they're getting their asses handed to them in AI. All right? They're going to have to adapt or die. It's exactly like the 90s, folks, when you had intranet and internet. You had closed systems and you had public systems. And the public systems won out because it was decentralized. Bingo. Boy, chat's on fire this morning. Y'all are riled up. It's the, hey, Heidi, tell me this ain't accurate. It's the protocol wars.
It's the protocol wars.
Yeah, absolutely. YouTube's protocol is old and outdated. They're done. They either change or they die.
It's like dial-up and
yes, right, exactly. It's like exactly like Heidi just said. Is that this is the difference between dial-up and high-speed internet, folks. YouTube is the old dial-up, where you have to log into a centralized exchange. Well, YouTube's going to get their asses handed to them. Google's going to get their asses handed to them. Right? Because of the centralization of their organization. All right, hang on one second. Word from the sponsor.
Ever wondered how safe your online activities really are? How secure is your digital footprint? In the vast realm of the internet, privacy and security are paramount. Without adequate protection, your personal data might be at risk. There are solutions to these issues, and today we're going to talk about two of them. Introducing Liberty laptops from CALIX Solutions. These cutting-edge devices are meticulously designed to bolster online privacy, providing you the liberty to surf the internet incognito. The World Wide Web can be a wild frontier, but with Liberty laptops, your online privacy is always protected. We also present you crypto laptops, designed with cryptocurrency users in mind. Equipped to support a myriad of wallets and exchanges, these laptops are tailored for seamless cryptocurrency transactions. They offer enhanced security protocols to keep your digital assets safe. Crypto laptops ensures a secure and smooth cryptocurrency experience. It's time to take control of your online privacy and security. Venture over to CALIX Solutions and explore our Liberty laptops and crypto laptops. Don't forget, our affiliate program lets you earn $50 per sale. Visit calixsolutions.io now or call 7028458276 for more information, because your online safety is our priority.
Folks, the reason I'm on fire this morning, number one, is Friday. I'll be damned if Friday is the best day of the week. You know what the second best day of the week is? Whatever today is. That's the second best day of the week. Today's Friday and today's today. So it's the best day of the fucking week. Because we woke up, we're alive, we have a chance to fucking make a difference. At the end of the day, if you feel like it was a wasted day, it probably was a wasted fucking day. We need to get out there and live life, folks. And when I say live life, I mean get out there and make a fucking difference. Get out there and do something that fucking amazes you. Do something you didn't think you could do. Just do it. Don't ask yourself, can I do this? Am I capable of doing it? Just fucking do it. Don't make excuses. Make shit happen. That's how you live your life. Every day, wake up like you're going to change the fucking world that day. Because you know why? You are. You make this world a better place than it was when you woke up this morning. We're doing that, folks. That's what these clubs are doing. That's what Bitcoin's doing. Look at all the energy. Look at all the people trying to make shit better. Look how they're collecting. Folks, think about this. We have libertarians joining with Trump Republicans. Folks, they're not far apart. They're not far apart. Trump is going to make the Constitution great again. And all of them agree that one of their biggest weapons to make America great and make the world a better place is Bitcoin. We all know it. We don't believe it. We don't think it. We don't, hypothetically, I guess it could happen. No, we're injecting truth into a system of lies. The lies go away, folks. See, the lies to scream. The lies have to scream to be believed. They have to be amplified to believe. That's why you hear the same messaging on all the channels. Because they have to scream it out. They have to repeat the lie, repeat the lie, repeat the lie. How do you beat that? You whisper the fucking truth. And you watch that whisper will echo louder than them yelling their lies. Folks, I'm raring to go today. This is, number one, I took my shot of testosterone yesterday. So I'm basically high on man juice. And I also took my weekly weight loss shot. I'm not giving the name out to yet because I want to make sure it works. And I want to make sure I can honestly say that it's good. That also gives you energy. Folks, I feel like the lead singer of Motley Crue in 1986. I feel like I'm high on cocaine. It's because everything's going our direction, right? Everything's lining up. You know why? Because truth and honesty harmonizes. Morning, Emma. How are you, gal? I like that black hat, by the way. Okay. She says, come to the gym with us. Hon, I'm up in Massachusetts, babe. Plus, I won't even drive by a gym. We'll order Google to reroute me around gyms so I don't even see them.
You just need steak.
Exactly. All I need is testosterone and steaks. I'm good to go. Oh, and coffee. Yeah. Folks, everything in Bitcoin is great. You ever heard that song, Everything is Wonderful? Yeah, you don't want to hear me sing. That's us right now. Everything is wonderful. Everything is today's the most amazing day of your life. Now go make today your bitch. How about this? How about we say, make today your Brian Armstrong? How's that sound? Yeah. Make today your Brian Armstrong. Make it your bitch. Brian, you little bitch. Oh, God, I'm going to tweet at him and just say, bitch. Bitch. You little bitch. You little bald-headed bitch. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I got a little grudge against Brian right now. And something else. This is something we need to do more of. We need to call out these little bitches. We need to call out these bitches and just say, hey, Brian, you're a fucking bitch. It's because there's too many bitches in charge. We got too many little bitches, too many little limp-wristed fucking bitches in charge. Look at Camel Toe, that bitch. Somebody needs to put her back under a desk where she fucking belongs. Right? I'm so sick and tired of this fucking government screwing the American people. We got enough money to send over to Ukraine, but we got homeless vets. We shouldn't be sending a dime to nobody, not a damn soul, until our veterans are taken care of. End of sentence. Period. And we need to make America great again. Hey, you guys in Ukraine, my apologies, but fuck you. fuck Ukraine, fuck Israel, fuck every country that ain't America. I don't care. I don't care. It's not that I want bad things to happen to other countries. We can't worry about other countries when we got homeless vets, we have homeless Americans, we have drug addicted Americans. San Francisco looks like Satan took a shit and then looked back and smiled. And we put up with this bullshit. We need to start saying no, folks. We need to start saying, you know what? No. Fuck you. Our founding fathers were the kings of fuck you. All right? Look at Hancock. When he signed the Declaration of Independence, he couldn't sign it any bigger. That was him saying, fuck you. That was his big fuck you to the king. Instagram just removed my content. Instagram, guess what? Fuck you. You little bitches. I guess Instagram was not so happy. Folks, I'm swinging over to the private server. You want to join me? Click the link under here. Because apparently not so good for the gram. Okay, we're switching to the private server. Click the link under here to join the private server. Everyone on the private server, please hold. Everyone else, join the private server where I will be continuing my rant. Love you guys. See you on the private server. Hold, please. All right. Save changes. Oh, wait. Save changes. All right. We are strictly on the private server right now. Hey, that's cool. I don't have to actually black out anymore. Sweet. Okay. Everyone on the private server. I gotta take a break for a second. I'm about like pop a blood vessel here. All right. Now, I have an interview here. Shout out to Robert Breedlove. Great fucking interview with Brandon. Right? And if you don't know who Brandon is, you're about to learn who Brandon is. All right. So, folks, the title of this is Bitcoin's role in the fourth turning. Morning, brother. Right. Bitcoin's role in the fourth turning. Folks, if you watch this and you don't get it, you ain't gonna get it. Because this is a breakdown of where we're going, folks. The Bitcoin is going to take over global value retention in so many ways, not just monetary, but freedom-wise. The Bitcoin is going to help you reclaim your freedom, reclaim your independence. Let's just put it this way. That's right. Drive that hog, baby. The Bitcoin's gonna make men great again. Bitcoin's gonna help make women great again. Bitcoin's gonna help make America great again. And the Bitcoin's gonna keep these other countries in fucking line. But we, as Americans, we have to get America in line. That's the agreement, folks. If we want Russia to watch their P's and fucking Q's, we need to watch our P's and fucking Q's too. We need to be honest players in an honest world. Because an honest world is a great world. And honesty doesn't mean nice. Honesty means you call Brian Armstrong a bitch when he's acting like a bitch. That's what makes America and the world great again. You call out the bitches, human and non-human bitches. Okay, here we go. I digress. Sorry, folks. It's Friday. It's fucking Friday.
Fourth turning, and are we in one?
Previous one was between 1929 and 1945. The whole idea of Western liberal democracy and capitalism was under question. You're watching them fall one by one in Europe. And what happens? We do crazy things as a government. Global financial crisis, that transitions us into the new fourth turning. The exterior world is crumbling, from politics to business to media to any institution that holds society together. And it just so happens that that's the same climate that makes us ripe for war. And the scary thing right now is we have an incredible debt problem as well. So
what is a fourth turning, and are we in one?
Previous one was between 1929 and 1945. The whole idea of Western liberal democracy and capitalism was under question. You're watching them fall one by one in Europe. And what happens? We do crazy things as a government. Global financial crisis, that transitions us into the new fourth turning. The exterior world is crumbling, from politics to business to media to any institution that holds society together. And it just so happens that that's the same climate that makes us ripe for war. And the scary thing right now is we have an incredible debt problem as well. So we're in for a big one as far as I can tell. And I think you ask the average person, they feel it.
Yeah, well, something is definitely different the past few years, and things do feel like they're building towards a crescendo of some kind.
In my opinion, Bitcoin could only emerge in a third or fourth turning.
Of course, has to.
It has to. It wouldn't be adopted otherwise. And
we need the pain.
We need the pain, and we haven't realized we need a change yet. Could it get messy? Yes. Will it get messy? Yes. But the future is not bleak. The future is bright. And I think it starts with the individual.
Have you ever wanted to start a business in the Bitcoin space? If so, then the Wolf Startup Accelerator could be for you. Wolf is the first startup. So I still, admittedly, have not read The Fourth Turning, but I have read your essay that you published on this topic 2 years ago at this point.
Yeah, maybe 3.
And I think we've talked about it once on the show before, but given the events of the past 24-ish months since we spoke last, I think it's a good opportunity to talk about it again. So maybe we should just start with the basics. Like, what is a fourth turning, and are we in one?
Definitely. Yeah, we're in Nashville at the Bitcoin conference. Trump speaks tomorrow.
Yeah.
It feels like the energy is ramping up. So
Yes.
I'm with you. It's the time.
Fresh off the assassination attempt as well. So this should be a pretty lit day tomorrow when Trump speaks.
Can't believe he's here.
Yeah.
We've come a long way, by the way, as
Yeah.
a Bitcoin community, if there is a Bitcoin community.
Mm.
So what is the fourth turning? 2 historians / demographers started researching generations and demography and history in the 80s. And through that process, they were essentially identifying a unique pattern that emerged throughout history around these unique cohorted groups of humans called generations. We have the millennials, Gen X, boomers, etc. And their overarching thesis is essentially that a group of people are all born around the same time. And so the conditions in which they came of age was similar. So they were born in the same point in history. For us, it might be things that shaped us might be 9/11, the global financial crisis, growing up in the 90s, things like that. And then we all come of age together and we sort of cement this cohort. We have the same general hopes, fears, ambitions. And when we then grow up in the world as a cohort, we can sort of predictably, how we interact with the world as adults is somewhat predictable because we're sort of forged as a cohort. And then what they noticed was that after one type of cohort is born, and he gives archetypes to each one, very predictably, the next generation rebels against their parents.
Yeah.
If you have kids or you're a kid yourself, you probably know what this feels like. So then all of a sudden there's the next generation is predictable, that same archetype. And then they found that there's a cycle of 4 archetypes. And wow, this thing goes back since the beginning of America. And we can start to examine the mood of society based on the constellation of these archetypes. Is the hero in charge, or is the artist in charge? And then you kind of look at the 4 periods and it kind of looks like spring, summer, fall, and winter. And then you look at the 4 stages of human life. You're a child, then you're a young adult, then you're midlife, and then you're an elder. And each of those stages have very predictable roles in society. And so you start to look at this and it does feel like this emergent human cycle. It's some sort of a weird biological thing, but also humans are a social species. So you combine this together and somehow order emerges out of these patterns.
Wow.
And so they came through this realization. They published their first book in, I think it was the early 90s. Presidents were recommending it. It was a very big deal. And then in 1997, they published The Fourth Turning, which was very focused on the cycles. Same year as The Sovereign Individual.
Right.
Both of these books predicted tremendous amounts of the future. And since then, one of the co-authors has died. The other one, Neil Howe, is still alive. I talk to him now about this stuff, which is quite fun. But that's the essential thesis. And it came into my life during the pandemic, summerish of 2020. I'm cooped up inside. The world's going crazy. Honestly, I was a little manic trying to make sense of the world. I can't help myself. I need to understand things, or the illusion of understanding things. And I came across this book and it started to make sense. Or I could start to answer the questions like, why are my friends, family, neighbors submitting to this authority that is so clearly corrupt? Why would we possibly do what they're telling us? It's madness. Why would my neighbor tell on my other neighbor because there's too many cars in the driveway for Thanksgiving? And in my head, we're America, we stand up for what's right. And maybe that's me projecting on what I want to see. But I quickly found out that we're a social species that is ripe to be controlled.
Yeah.
And again, very frustrating, hard time. The thesis made sense. And I go, oh, okay. The fourth turning is that the end of that four stage cycle.
Right.
And what we find at the end of a long human life, 80, 90 years, is that we look around and we realize that we can't trust the institutions anymore. The exterior world is crumbling, from politics to business to media to any institution that holds society together. And what is our collective instinct as a group? We say, wow, we really need to fix the exterior world. It's so bad that I'm willing to do crazy things. Anything's on the table. I'm willing to make extreme sacrifice. I'm willing to get in line and take the jab of who knows what just for the greater good, even though it makes no logical sense. And so then you create the climate there. And it just so happens that that's the same climate that makes us ripe for war. And then you look back over the last 500 years, and the end of this cycle, what he calls the fourth turning, the fourth quadrant there, that's when every single total war in American history has happened in a fourth turning. And every fourth turning has had total war. And so if we look back at the previous fourth turnings, we're in one right now, we'll get to that. The previous one was between 1929 and 1945. So it kicks off with the stock market collapse. Then we have the 1930s, the Great Depression. Somehow FDR gets elected. We have the communists versus the fascists in America. The whole idea of Western liberal democracy and capitalism was under question. You're watching them fall one by one in Europe. And what happens? We do crazy things as a government. We decide deficit spending is okay for the first time. All the people are scared, so we give them Social Security. We give them FDIC insurance. Don't worry, the banks aren't going to do this again. Then obviously we find ourselves into World War II. And what happens? You have this communism, fascism fight in America. And all of a sudden we immediately mobilize into action after Pearl Harbor. The whole country focuses on the new enemy. And we actually form really tight community bonds. And so we shatter this fractured energy and we become one strong force, because now it's existential. And that's what we want. We know we have to make the trade. We go to war. And then at the end of that period, the entire world is reimagined. Just slam the chessboard down and reset all the pieces. We get Bretton Woods. We get NATO. We get the World Bank. Essentially, an entire new structure is formed. And that is one period of the fourth turning. What's after that? The first turning. And all of a sudden the mood shifts. We're sick of fighting. We get Leave It to Beaver, white picket fences, a society of equality and also really boring culture. And that's the pendulum swinging away from fourth turning energy into this. We have a demand for stability. You go a little bit farther, and the kids of that stable era, what do? They rebel against their parents. They create the civil rights era, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And that's midway through the cycle. We reimagine our interior world. So again, every 80 years from the 60s back, you end up in this religious movement, essentially. It can take different forms, but you have the Puritans, you have essentially awakenings of different flavors. And that's, again, back to the generational archetypes. The constellation is ripe for the idealistic individuals, the boomers, also called the prophets. They're the ones coming of age and steering culture. Then we go into the third turning, which is a period of what he calls the unraveling. All of a sudden, economics are pretty good. Institutions are starting to crumble and everybody kind of knows it, but we're all doing okay. So who cares? This is massive deregulation. This is the 80s and the 90s and the early aughts. Then we get global financial crisis. That transitions us into the new fourth turning, kind of like 1929. Then we go through a period where we have cancel culture, eat the rich, raising taxes, again, just like we did in the 30s. We have the left versus the right, and they genuinely believe that both parties will destroy America. And so again, we're setting up these conditions for another climax period, usually war, probably war, preferably not, but if I'm betting, that's what I'm betting on. And here we are right in the middle of it. And the author believes, I think he was on a recent show, he said we're a 6 out of 10 on ramping. And
to war.
To the climax, which we assume is, it doesn't need to be war by definition, but it needs to be sufficiently mobilizing that the left and the right can band together. Now, at the same time, if you look back, it's not always a war abroad, right? And even looking at the Revolutionary War, we think it's over tax over tea and it's like against the Brits. but more lives were lost between the loyalists and the patriots, Americans versus Americans, way more than the redcoats. So that was kind of a hybrid thing. And in every fourth turning, we flirt with throwing away democracy, we flirt with civil war, and it's on a knife edge where we go. And the scary thing right now is we have an incredible debt problem as well.
Yeah.
So we're in for a big one as far as I can tell. And I think you ask the average person, they feel it.
Yeah, well, something is definitely different the past few years, and things do feel like they're building towards a crescendo of some kind. What I guess this is then captured in that old saying, right? That hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times, and the cycle continues. Now, my question about this would be, because in part it's like it sounds like this is something that is emergent from nature itself, right? You even analogize it, I think, to the seasons in a way, right? That there's just something built into the structure of the universe or reality that causes us to go through these quadrants or four-phased sequences, in our own lives. You mentioned at the individual scale that this might be like kind of the macrocosm of that, something to that effect. But then when I think about the particular sequence of events you gave, you mentioned 1929 as being like the catalyst, the beginning point for the last fourth turning. And then I don't know would then COVID be the beginning point for this fourth turning, perhaps? But sorry, to get to the question, those are engineered or man-made events through my lens, at least. I would be Rothbardian in my views about the Great Depression, that's driven by the central bank. Obviously, the pandemic is very significantly socially engineered. So what is the role of, I guess, nature versus nurture in this cyclical process?
Excellent point. And a similar critique, just to bolster your position, is that people will say, yeah, but what about the internet? What about technology? Doesn't that just throw a wrench in the whole idea? And honestly, when I first read the book, I was on team technology first as being the driver. And I sat a little bit deeper with the material. And, now I sit more on the side of this theory predicts the mood. It predicts how we respond to catalysts. And so the classic example is the Lusitania. I forgot. There's an American ship that was sunk by the Germans, and it was during a third turning, the unraveling. Right. So essentially, no one wants to do anything. And when that ship was sunk, no one cared. We just moved on. And then it's just a period of excess and party. Then you go in the fourth turning, Pearl Harbor happened, and the next day, the entire country is mobilized for war. Both catalysts are similar, but our response was different.
Yeah.
And another way to look at it is in the 70s, 80s, 90s, the microchip was seen as a tool to liberate humans from authoritarians. Then now what is the microchip seen as and used as? It's actually probably the most powerful authoritarian tool imaginable. And we got to make our own little versions of software to somehow navigate this new panopticon.
Yeah.
And so I think the mood is a key point. And I also think that the transitionary period and the times between cycles, it's not a defined line.
Sure.
It becomes obvious in hindsight because you see society fork, essentially. And the 20s were a period of excess, and I agree. Excessive spending made the 1929 collapse really bad. And then we needed deficit spending to outspend in order to get society back on the right track. However, if we didn't go to that period of excess with fiat money, it wouldn't have been such a big problem. We wouldn't have had such a large reactionary force.
Yeah.
And so I'm with you on this one. If we have fiat money, the cycles are going to have really high amplitude.
Amplifies it.
Yeah. Versus a more steady, typical Austrian, smooth out the business cycle a little bit.
Which is exactly what it does.
Yeah.
To, as you just said, the business cycle, also to just economic outcomes in general, right? Like leverage will amplify your gains or your losses. This is how you can have total ruin.
That's right.
So fiat is like throwing gas on this. It's an engineered scheme that's throwing gas on this natural fire, something like that.
I think that's right.
Okay, that's very fascinating. You have this chart, the supply versus demand of order.
Yes.
Can you, and maybe we can get this in the post edit, get this on the screen, because I think it will make make it easiest to see it.
I think so.
Could you describe what this is and how it overlays on the fourth turning model?
Definitely. So order in this context essentially means society institutions, thing that makes stability and order in society. It could be our government, it could be the laws, the legal system, it could be the social climate, it could be anything that sort of keeps us all together.
Just like institutional integrity or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do we trust them? And
Right.
are they doing their job?
Right.
And how much do we have to think about our institutions?
Yes.
If they're doing a good job, they're
Right.
out of sight, out of
It's
mind.
automatic,
Now
yeah.
everything's political.
Sure.
Right. So that's probably a good way to look at it. In the first turning, let's start with the fourth turning. The fourth turning is total war. And again, 1929 to 1945. In that situation, the supply of order is at an all-time low. The world's crumbling. Everyone's can't eat. You don't know about tomorrow. So we're fearful and we're willing to do anything. But the demand for order, all-time high. So we are desperate for change, and we're so desperate and we're so scared we'll make large sacrifice. Then we get through the war. Now we're in the first turning. We still have a high supply of order because we just re-architected the institutions and they fit us and we all agreed to it, and it's great. And our demand for order is also high because we're coming off that war. However, then our kids grow up and they realize that this world's boring and they don't want this much order. They want a little pizzazz out there. And so the demand for order crumbles while the supply is still high. And that delta between the supply and demand is what creates the conditions for change in society.
Yeah.
And that's that midway point. That's the awakening. High supply and low demand means burn it all down, demonstrations, civil rights movement, etc. And then the third turning, again, you can just think of this as a wave. Then the demand for order, it's still low because we just made that change, but the supply is down now because we just tore down all the interior, all the religious, cultural institutions. And then you're in a period of excess and unraveling and deregulation and no order and no one cares. We're at a party and we'll just keep going until the punch bowl's gone type environment. Then you're right back in the fourth turning, and things, because you've took your eye off the ball, institutions decay. And as they're decaying, society starts to decay with it. Morality goes down. Everything's political. Cancel culture goes up. We have all these weird symptoms emerge that we think we blame on the internet. But I believe it's from this deeper social creature thing. We don't know why we're doing it. We just have a collective realization. And again, that's supply is low, but demand all of a sudden skyrockets because we realize we actually do need our institutions.
Wow.
And that creates the most volatile period.
Is this kind of like a grass is greener mentality that's just baked into all of us? It's like we always want what we don't have. We're always trying to zig when others are, like, we've been zagging for a while. Now we want to zig, or maybe just taking it for granted, even as you said, that there was high demand and then high supply of order in the post-war world. But then after kind of one generation, the next generation is like, why do we need all this orderliness? Like, let's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Let's just party. But then then demand collapses. So eventually supply follows. Then until you get to the bottom of that, and then you're like, oh shit, maybe we did actually need some institutional stability to make things work. Is this just like a natural impulse we have baked into us? Or like,
I think so.
Wow.
In my belief, it has to do with humans and youth and the coming of age.
Okay.
And I think it's actually a good thing because in my opinion, young people's role is to be overly idealistic and believe that their parents are wrong and take crazy risks and just like, they're not jaded yet. They don't know
to get
anything.
Closer to those ideals.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it's the role of elders in society to say, yeah, I love your energy. Channel it. Once you get to my age, you'll figure out how it really works, right? Because young people are almost always wrong.
Yes.
And that's the progressive versus the conservative. It's the same in any organization. The progressive's job is to inject novelty and come up with new ideas. The conservative point of view is to sift through those ideas and only allow the best through. And so I think that's like the fundamental baseline part. And yeah, the grass is always greener. That's kind of what kids do. They rebel from their parents. That just is embedded. And I also think you mentioned an interesting point, which is looking at the long view. Like, this cycle is one human life. Why is that
Right.
relevant?
Of course.
No one alive essentially today
Right.
was here for World War II.
Right.
It's out of sight, out of mind. We don't
Right.
know how bad it is.
Right.
And so we're blissfully, ignorantly walking into war,
Mm.
and no one's here to tell us otherwise, right? It's the same reason why if you have wealth in your family and you want to pass it on, a couple generations go by
Yeah.
and you don't know how you got it. You don't know
Right.
what it means. If you don't have those values, you're going to take it for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. So the third generation typically squanders it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Similar concept.
So it's the, yeah, I don't know who said this. It was like the one lesson we can draw from history is that humans don't draw lessons from history, kind of thing. We
Exactly.
actually are just, I mean, obviously it's not repeating, but it is rhyming quite significantly that history is actually following these cyclical patterns.
Mhm.
That's so interesting. This September 5th through 9th, 2024, join me on the Pacific coast of Mexico for our first ever men's retreat, which we are calling The Art of Alpha. In a cooperative training environment at a world-class retreat center, we will be having daily meditations, movement practices, yoga, cold plunging, infrared sauna, lymphatic drainage, massage, heart rate variability training, gut health lectures, all while enjoying an anti-inflammatory diet, free of allergens and designed for optimal full body health. The retreat center is a gorgeous biohacker's paradise. In Bitcoin, we often dream about the idea of forming citadels. So then we are currently at, if we're in a fourth turning, then the demand for order is now going up
Yes.
because of the supply of it being so low recently. What is
Yes.
it that, I guess, what is the shift? What has driven that shift most recently? Like, if you're gonna articulate that specific change,
Mhm.
in terms of what we've seen recently in recent memory, what would that be?
Yeah, I think you can go the fourth turning view, which is global financial crisis. I
Yeah.
think that's the transitionary period. And then we go into a period of hope and change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the politics at a macro here is helpful. So in a third turning, let's say the 90s, supply of order low, demand low.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the politician's best interest to say, oh, problems, no big deal. Minimize all problems. Everything's fine. Look around. Bill
Mhm.
Clinton, baby. Let's just juice the economy. Let's deregulate,
Mhm.
gas pedal. And you go into a fourth turning, and now there's still the same amount of problems, or maybe a rising amount of problems. And what do politicians do? They don't hide them anymore.
Mhm.
They say, hey, everything's messed up. I'm your savior. Vote for me. I will fix it. And it's that flip is the collective realization that it is bad. And we're starting to feel it now.
Mhm.
So we actually have to do something about it. And nobody wants to. We always act late. We got to touch the
Right.
stove. And the scary thing is we build all that energy, and it's underneath the surface, and you can feel the tension. Families are
Yeah.
breaking. And what politicians are just gas on the fire. They're feeding the divide because
Right.
it's in their best interest to garner their votes by saying that.
For sure.
So they harness the energy, they make it worse, and then it builds and builds and builds, and then it crescendos, typically with war.
Yeah.
And then sadly, what we do is we make very fast decisions with limited information with our backs against the wall.
Hmm.
You know, if we could just plan it out and make, hey, you know what? We're in the information age. Let's calculate how society will look. Let's make good decisions when we don't need to.
Mhm.
That'd be ideal.
Yeah.
But humans don't do that.
No.
We do it all at the last second, and we pick up the pieces later, and then we just deal with it.
Yeah, this is making me call into mind for me Hitler's rise to power, right? Where he came out of the ashes of the Weimar hyperinflation. So I guess that's a time where order was very low, right? Literally, the currency hyperinflated. The country had
Correct.
got its ass kicked. I think that's the right sequence of events, and they were. This created the conditions in which the strong man could rise to power, right? So,
Correct.
so is that a risk, or maybe the risk in a fourth turning environment, like when the demand for order is rising but the supply is low, that the guy that comes out beating his chest the loudest with the boldest solutions
Yep.
can be taken up by the people as like a savior, and then oftentimes you end up with an autocratic nightmare, as in the case of Hitler. Like, is that something we should be afraid of? Because if so, I would assume that would be the left's current argument against a guy like Trump.
Correct. It's a very good point and 100% true. If we go back to that period, Weimar, after World War One, we essentially sanctioned the hell out of Germany.
Mhm.
So they have a bad economy, they have hyperinflation, they have a social climate that mirrors the degeneracy and debauchery we
Yeah.
have now.
Yeah.
So even more reason for a law and order, big stick, nationalist type energy.
Mhm.
Which we definitely feel today. And yes, I think the left would say Trump would destroy democracy. He's the last president for any sort of peaceful democracy.
Mhm.
And the right would say, well, this isn't democracy today. We have some weird shadow puppet thing.
Yeah.
And they kind of go, and both sides believe the other side's existential.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we should be as bright-eyed and bushy-tailed as we possibly can as humans right
Yeah.
now, because the next 10 years defines the next century.
Yeah.
And yeah, small decisions matter now, and it's very easy to get this wrong.
Right. So you then mark the current fourth turning we're in somewhere in the ballpark. 2008 great financial crisis is maybe the spark point or the inflection point, whatever, the beginning. And then you would expect this to run through mid 2030s.
About
So we're close to the end. Well, I guess not really, but 2/3 of the way through, maybe. Um, what do you see over the next? I mean, we're obviously mid 2024 right now, so we've got 10, 11 years left on this thing. What is your outlook for the next decade plus 1 year?
Yeah, so let's just call it 10 years to make it easy.
Yeah.
I would say the last 3 to 5 years will be post the peak.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's less time than we think, I assume, before it gets bad. And so we'll crescendo, we'll taper off a little bit, and that's when you'll see however this thing shakes out, the winners will reset the game board in their best interest. And so I would say between 3 to 7 years, somewhere in that feels like a good estimate for when we'll hit a peak. What is that? How could it be? Honestly, I think no one knows, and anyone who has confidence in that answer you should treat it with a grain of salt. But what I see is two primary forces. One is the standard generational cycle. We're ready for war. Then I see a giant debt problem. And what are we going to do about the debt? Well, conveniently, war gets spending approved very easily. If the barbarian's at the gate, nobody minds a little inflation to save your country. And so it sure feels like the war drums are beating. We already see it abroad. Now, what scares me more than ever is that we have so much debt right now that this is a new type of fourth turning. In the 30s, we did not have this. So we spent a lot on social programs to recover the economy and also on war. And in the process, we built a lot of capital assets here, and we were the victor compared to Europe. And so we had an unfair advantage. We took on a lot of debt, but we also just created an economic engine. Today, we have debt up to our eyeballs. And so more debt is going to create a bigger sort of financial situation. And so we don't have the room to spend our way out of it. And so in my mind, that creates a scarier environment. I also think this is the first proper fourth turning that it's entirely global. And so in a globalized world, we can't help it, but we're overlapping with other countries.
Okay.
I wouldn't say I have a strong grasp of each country one by one. I'm not tracking it globally. But we do start to see things sync up. We're seeing a nationalist wave, a far left and a far right wave populism in slightly different forms all over the world. And so I foresee many countries are going to have a similar chaotic period, and some will go one way, some will go the other. And so I think that's in front of us. I think when I look at what could or couldn't happen, how does that resolve? I honestly think Bitcoin plays a role here. I have my orange tinted glasses on, of course. However, in this environment, there's two things we have to solve: debt and order. The debt problem, okay, well, Bitcoin is an off-ramp to the debt spending. There's rumors that presidential candidates are going to be announcing a strategic Bitcoin reserve tomorrow. No idea, no opinion. But I think Americans are starting to realize this, and maybe they're coming to terms, maybe they're bending the knee, maybe they're capitulating to Bitcoin because it is in their best interest to start siphoning away Bitcoin. If we rebase the currency, or worst case scenario, we have some major hyperinflation, well, Bitcoin was going to rip in that situation. So you might as well hedge your bet. And I think that that's true on the state level, and I think that's true on the individual level. No matter where you are in the world, if you don't want to go down with your country's ship, you have the choice right now to squirrel away some Satoshis for your family. No matter where you are, you can get a couple sats. And what does that do? That makes you as an individual less fearful, less volatile, and you're no longer backed against the wall.
Right.
Because we do crazy things when you're backed against the wall. And Bitcoin is a way to individually free people. Corporations are doing the same. Nation states are doing the same. So that serves as a pressure release valve in this chamber we're constantly increasing the pressure on. And so that gives me a little bit of hope there. The next thing is, how do we unite left and right? How do we create conditions where order reemerges and the people are in on it? It can't be a partisan issue. Bitcoin is pretty partisan today, but properly understood, there's something for everyone here.
Of course.
And so in that type of environment, we should see Bitcoin should be viewed as an institution. It should be viewed as a public good. It reinstills trust in the society. And we no longer have to outsource that trust to the old white guys sitting around a table setting monetary policy for the world. And so I think properly understood, that is going to emerge, and it can take pressure off. I don't want to overstate its role, but I think it plays a serious role. And that's the one thing that will maybe reduce the peak of this cycle, because otherwise it looks as bad as ever.
So it's almost like the antithesis of what you were just saying about fiat. The fiat can be like gas on the fire, that because Bitcoin is basically anti-fiat, that it could maybe dampen the violence or the virulence of this particular cycle.
That's
maybe
right.
it could be less destructive, or at least have a way to transition out of it more smoothly, something to that effect.
Exactly. I think that's the only way we don't go into global hot war, is if we somehow get people on a new monetary system and they see their local quality of life improving.
Right.
And they can, maybe the civic stuff, the government institutions, maybe that does change and maybe it gets really bad.
Yeah.
But if you look outside in your neighborhood and it's not so bad, you're going to maybe not freak out. Maybe it won't mobilize the country.
Yeah.
Because I also see the highest chance of civil war for sure in our lifetime. I wasn't around in the 30s, but it had a similar climate there. And if you go back to the 30s, people would assume, if you said, hey, are we going to go to a war abroad, or are we going to have a civil war here? It would have been unanimous civil war here. That was the feeling.
Yeah.
We're in that now. And so that's the side of this that really scares me. A global hot war abroad, it feels so abstract.
Yeah.
But a civil war on your own territory, that terrifies me, and I feel it coming. And if we enter that, you think our global adversaries aren't going to smell weakness?
Of course.
If we have some event like that, Taiwan's gone tomorrow. Putin takes whatever he wants. Whoever.
Sure.
We're weak and we're going to get stomped on, which it could start as a civil war here and end up as World War III.
And we were a head turn away from a civil war, probably, right? With the Trump assassination attempt. Had that happened, right? Had he died on, 4K HD television all over the world, I mean, the temperature I've taken here in the South amongst people that are largely Republican is, that would have been the spark.
Yep.
And so we're very close, and obviously it's in our DNA. So it wouldn't be the first civil war we've had on this soil. And I think that would be, if the global superpower is embroiling itself in an internal conflict, and obviously any competitor to that regime is going to use that as an opportunity, right? Why would you not? Might be the only opportunity you get. That is scary to think about. So maybe this term clown world gets thrown around a lot. Is this a fourth turning thing? Like you mentioned earlier, the Weimar Republic, they had a lot of cultural degeneracy, gender fluidity nonsense as well when they were going through their own fourth turning. We're clearly seeing a lot of that today with the woke mind virus and all of this nonsense. Is clown world just the most obvious symptom of us being in a fourth turning, and should we expect it to just persist until we go into the first turning again? Like, what what else can we
Yeah.
think or do about this?
Good observation. I think the answer to that is yes. So going back to my original story of how I came about this and why it made sense to me was I saw Clown World and I couldn't put any logic behind it. Clown World doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. Where is
Yeah.
this coming from? Through the lens, I think that's the most visceral symptom here that the average person sees. But the average person also says, well, it's because of social media, or it's
Right.
because of this. And I think that's the error here. It's a very lazy approach to just, well, it's on Twitter, so it's Twitter's fault.
Right.
It's much deeper than that. And
Agreed.
I wish it was just Twitter.
Yeah.
But no, this is very deep. If you remember during COVID, if you remember Trump's first presidency, you remember now, these things are destroying families.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's insane.
Ripping families apart. Yeah. That's not Twitter's fault.
That's not Twitter's fault.
No.
That's not normal. And that is very forth turning. So to your question, yeah, I would expect Clown World to accelerate until we hit whatever the peak of this thing is. And then the battle lines will be drawn. The petty stuff will go away. It will feel existential. And we will enter a fight over the fourth American Republic. And founding fathers had a version of America, each fourth turning on a knife's edge of where the country goes. And sometimes it's a little better, sometimes it's a little worse, but we essentially reinvent ourselves each time. And I think part of this is like entropy and change, and institutions decay naturally.
Yeah, of course.
And so as they decay, that simultaneously means, well, we got to fix them. And then you start over again, and then they decay, and then you start over again.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's going to get bad. We're going to fight over the next American Republic. And I hope, my sincere belief is it's something closer to OG American values, distribution of power, individual rights. How about a little merit?
Yeah.
How about equality of opportunity?
Yeah.
Bitcoin provides a lot of these things, and we need a society where merit compounds and good deeds are rewarded, because that's how you create a strong country.
Yeah.
So I foresee a continuing rising force to shut the borders. I see more like anti-woke energy rising. I think we're already peaked there.
Yeah.
I foresee a return to more what we might call family values.
Yeah.
I think the pendulum's already swinging that direction. And I think a fourth turning sort of exposes the excess, exposes how silly those things are, because a larger threat is on our doorstep.
Yeah.
And so for those of us who maybe don't like Clown World, that might be something to look forward to. But I don't look forward to it, because the door we walk through there is not going to be pleasant.
Right. Yeah. This quote came to mind as you were saying that the race, civilization is a race between education and catastrophe. That like we actually, I mean, it works like this actually, that people have zoomed out and said, this is a pattern we keep repeating, right? Whereas if you don't zoom out and look at it that way, you're just going to get sucked into your current little micro conflict of, right now, there's a lot of people thinking we're in election season. If I vote red or I vote blue, that's how I save the world, right? And as you pointed out earlier, they both think the equal and opposite thing of one another, right? Like, to vote, if you're blue and you think voting red will literally end the world, and if you're red, you think the opposite. That's not useful, right? It's actually, it's not a deep dive into the nature of the world. Actually, if you think that voting is like the deepest thing we figured out to move the world and solve problems, then I just don't think you've dug deep enough. So how can we, I mean, I guess I have some optimism here, because we have this sort of decentralized media / education movement with podcasts and the internet, and people kind of doing their own research. And, COVID was an accelerant to this, right? The government's pumping one narrative, and sure, it worked on a lot of people, but there was like an equal and opposite reaction where a lot of people said, oh shit, I can't trust the government at all. Like they've completely lied to me and poisoned me and all of these other things. So people have been awakened this time around. What else can we do, I guess, if it is that race between education and catastrophe? Like, what else can we do on the educational front to help avoid catastrophe?
Yeah, I think that's a good frame. And you're 100% right. The harder the, let's say, encroaching state pushes, you do see a counterforce. And I'm quite optimistic about the counterforce on media. I think all metrics show it's already larger than traditional media.
Yeah.
And I think another frame that comes to mind here is about science, the idea that science advances at the age of, or the speed of scientists dying.
Yeah, from funeral to funeral. I love that one. Yeah.
And I think it's a similar situation here where we're simultaneously aging out old ideas. We have young energy. And I think coming in with alternative media, decentralized things, encryption at scale, all these things we talked about in Bitcoin land. And the question around what can you do on the education front, I think we should be building the world we want to see.
Yeah.
I think we should return to Bucky Fuller, and you don't change the system by voting harder.
Right.
You change the system by building something new and bringing the people onto something new. And I think, obviously, there's a lot of ties to Bitcoin here. And one tie to young people that I probably should have mentioned earlier is that we're in a society now where young people have no hope. They're nihilistic. They're YOLO Dogecoin. They're sports betting. They're degenerate in society. They're generally anxious. They're all on SSRIs, et cetera. These are all symptoms of no hope for the future. And you cannot have a society where young people aren't hopeful.
Right.
And I think where Bitcoin comes into that equation is it does provide a platform to be hopeful. First, you come in to get rich, which is human nature. Then you find out there's something more to this thing. And then you find out that this is a little tutor or a little guide to take you through the back curtain of society. And the deeper you go, the more you start to uncover, and you sort of rebuild your worldview, I think, on sturdier ground. And the deeper you go, I think the more joy you bring into your life. You you start with an orange pill, and then you end up taking a white pill because you realize that we're going to win. We have the tools.
Yeah.
Could it get messy? Yes. Will it get messy? Yes. But the future is not bleak. The future is bright. And I think it starts with the individual. And so continuing educational platforms like this, building tools like Nostr as communication tools, encryption generally, all these different dissident tech, freedom tech, whatever you want to call that umbrella. I think that is what we can do to at least minimize the pain here. And on the other side, it's not guaranteed that we're going to a bright future in the first turning. Depending on how this shakes up, we could have a really bad future.
Right.
But without Bitcoin, without encryption, without Nostr, I would not be very optimistic about what emerges after, right? Because, okay, we get through the crisis, but we're going to rebuild. Who's the leader in charge? What are we, in my mind, it's a sort of an AI techno state communist overlord panopticon mega state thing, similar to maybe what China's vision is with social credit scores and CBDC. You just create a mega brain and we modulate society. I think that's a path. I think another path is more OG America. It's built on distributed money, distributed communication, and we actually use technology in a defensive way. And it's the complete opposite of a mega state. It's actually like we fracture into thousands of countries because we can. It's an information state. You can't invade my country and steal my money. My money's encrypted. So the incentive to go to war, you've talked about this at length, is no longer as strong. And we might go from 200 countries, 300 countries to 3,000. And in that world, Bitcoin plays a role. Some sort of information communication platform plays a role. And that's a side of society I can get optimistic about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that giving just ultimately individuals the tools to express their preferences into the world in a way that can't be distorted by coercion, right? And that's, that's what we've been trying to create for a long time. The U.S. Constitution is one such tool, right? But now we have much better tools for the job in Bitcoin and Nostr and other encrypted dissident tech, et cetera. Forget multivitamins. There's this other angle, like this is a drum I've been beating too, that getting into the work of like Rene Girard, who does a lot on mimetic desire, how people are largely influenced through imitation, right? So it's like whatever, if someone's doing something that is, let's say, executing a strategy, a lifestyle strategy, a business strategy, a hunting strategy for that matter, and it works, well, that thing tends to spread through imitation, right? Like people see a strategy working and they copy the strategist who has the working strategy. This idea of, as Bitcoiners, that we've accumulated a lot of freedom and a lot of purchasing power through, I don't know, seeing through the matrix earlier than what we anticipate other people to see through the matrix. We need to be the change, BTC, right? Like if you actually want the world to move a certain direction, you have to find a way to become that direction that you ultimately want to see. And it's a good lens to think of the world through as a parent, obviously. Like,
Boy, doesn't that sound familiar? It's, you got to be the change. You have to act. You have to do something. Hence the clubs, folks. The clubs are my vision and our team's vision of doing that. None of us are waking up and sitting on a couch, sitting there bitching that somebody needs to do something. No, we are the somebodies that are doing something. Join us.
it becomes abundantly clear when you have children, and that child is basically a mirror to you, good, bad, and ugly. That whatever you do, it's not what you say, it's not what you espouse, it's not what you tweet, it's what you do, like your day-to-day patterns of action. That's what becomes reflected in the world around you. And so I don't know exactly, like I haven't fully formed this, but it's like that seems to me to be the biggest lever we can push, is actually being that change we wish to see. I don't know, I'm not here to prescribe what that is necessarily, but something we should take seriously. If you comply, right? If you wear a mask, if you, whatever, like, it's not just you're not just like keeping the peace and, not rocking the boat or whatever, but you're actually setting an example for future generations to follow. And you should think about that, right? Think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And think about who you're becoming in every action.
I got to comment on this
Yeah,
one,
please.
couple. So first off, I have this idea that all Bitcoiners who properly fall down the rabbit hole, they go through a similar arc, right? First they try to make money, and then if they go an inch deeper, they realize they discover the secrets of the universe, and they have to go evangelize this thing. What happens? Well, all their friends and family think they're crazy because they come
Cultists.
across crazy. And so, tying it to your point, you can't just shout this to people.
Right.
What you can do is quietly build some wealth, become more calm and confident, and genuinely build a better life. Why is Rob happy all the time? Everyone else has this low level static anxiety, and Rob seems pretty free of that. So I think Bitcoiners can take that lesson in our orange pilling journey. If you want to be successful, be that, show that. Don't say that. And if someone comes to you asking questions, of course you're going to share the information, but the message is delivered properly there. I also think at a meta point, in each of us individually should take that to heart, separate from Bitcoin, which is to say that if mimesis is real, and if you acting in a certain way has the potential to change someone else, then each of us individually should do our best to live out the life that we think society should do.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes,
And you
exactly.
should strive to not be mimetic with those around you, even though it's impossible. You should strive to do the thing that you think is right.
Right.
Because that does have a ripple effect.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a great point. Not only being the example you wish others to follow, but also being selective about who you expose yourself to, right?
Yes.
You can't, I guess some conscious knowledge of mimesis maybe is helpful, but I think it's ultimately an unconscious process, right? That you just become the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So you can't do anything about that, but you can choose the 5 people, maybe not completely, but to the best of your ability, that you spend the most time with. And so those mechanisms that are below human rationality or below human conscious awareness, I think are extremely important for actually driving real change in the world. And just something to think about. Again, I don't have like a prescription for like how you should be or who you should spend time with, but something to think about. Like it's not enough to just, well, look, I wrote the thing and read the book and told my mom and dad. It's like, that's great, but what they're really going to listen to is your actions. And as you said, becoming calmer, better, more successful, more loving, better relationships, all of these things, like actually being that positive change that other people can aspire to be.
And I think with mimesis, you're right. It's unavoidable. It's baked in, but you do have some agency here, to your point. And we're all going to play mimetic games. So just choose a game that you stand behind and allow mimesis to flow through you. If you want to work out more, maybe hang out with people who work out more. And
exactly.
what happens? You work out more.
Yeah, exactly.
And also don't go on your Instagram and say, I want that person's life because I saw him buy a sick car and a hot chick. You don't know what sacrifice they made to get to that point. You don't know what trade-offs they make. You don't know if they hate the chick and the car is rented.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like, be a little wholesome about this thing and like think about the big picture and then fully allow mimesis to capture you because it's free motivation. It's free momentum, essentially.
Yeah, that's a great point. Channel it, right? Instead of letting it get, like, that would be the critique on social media oftentimes. People are like saying, oh, people are posting highlight reels of their life. It's not real. And then it's making other people sad by comparison or jealous by comparison. It's like, well, if you know what your social media page looks like, you know it's not your life, right? There's a lot more beneath the surface. That's as true for you as it is for other people. So like apply that knowledge to yourself and don't get sucked into the belief that, I guess you're mistaking the map for the territory in a way, right? Like you start to mistake social media for real life. And that can, I don't even know if this is possible to say don't do that because the lines are blurring so much now.
Yeah.
That social media and real life are just intertwined. But
I think the takeaway here is actually an evolutionary biology approach, which is that we evolved in a small band of roughly kin. Call it Dunbar's number, 100, 150 people. And our hopes, desires, fears, motivations, it's all forged in a very long time scale there. And then culture explodes exponentially. And we find ourselves on Instagram and we look at that and we do feel jealous and it does make us feel bad. And that's actually a really useful trait in an environment when the guy next to you throws a spear in a unique way and he's killing all the animals and you're hungry. You do feel bad. It's a motivation to learn. But if you can get 24/7, you see all the people throwing spears around the world all at the same time and you get in the highlight tapes, all of a sudden you're just putting pain on yourself constantly. And so we didn't evolve for that. And honestly, zoom out a little bit here. I think this is a meta critique I have on modernity, which is that we're just not taking care of our biology. Our meat suit is abandoned. It's all head, no body, no limbic system, no brain, or no heart. And okay, we're fat, sick, and on prescription pills. And people are surprised. They're looking for these like inch deep explanations. No. We don't go for walks. We don't get sun. We don't eat real food. We don't have community. We don't take care of our families.
And they're looking for a pill to take.
It's the fundamental. And I come from someone who is like biohacker, all the supplements. You should have seen my cabinets at one point in my life, trying all the latest spiritual technologies all over the world. And then I realized that I just get some sun, eat real food, have good relationships, go for walks, lift some heavy things, relatively be balanced. All those pills can be thrown away.
I'm in the other spectrum of that right now. I just started biohacking for the first time like a year ago. And it's actually been very helpful because it's like a hobby. Plus I've been dealing with health issues and all that. And it's been helped me fix it up. But I can definitely see where you could take it too far. Right. People just there's nothing wrong with supplements or pills or medications, obviously, if you need it. But don't think you're going to take a pill to fix your life.
That's right.
Right. There's a whole.
And to address an issue, don't get me wrong, apply it. But if you are a healthy, happy, all things considered doing well, I don't think it benefits you very much to stay on a mega stack. I think our bodies, and we evolved in a niche called planet Earth. And if we try to be as similar as we can to that, I think we're going to have good outcomes. Now, if you're trying to go for like extreme longevity, different story. If it's intellectual interest, totally. But I think as a society, we over-index to the white pill.
For
And I
sure.
think biohackers generally are mostly that, but
Yeah.
they have a more sophisticated sheen to it,
Yeah.
and it's easier to justify to intellectual people.
Yeah, for sure.
That's my take.
Yeah, it's been a fun hobby so far. I'm a year in. I don't know how long it'll go, but okay. I guess Bitcoin, you mentioned this earlier. Bitcoin is a new form of social institution. So one of the primary determinants of this cyclical pattern you're describing, again, is, well, you said supply and demand of order, but that supply and demand of order determines the manifestation of institutional integrity, right? It's either getting more orderly or less orderly based on the demand curve and the direction of that demand curve. Bitcoin is a new form of social institution, one that presumably has superior integrity, right? It basically, if integrity is doing what you say you will do, right? For the U.S. government, for instance, maybe it's following the U.S. Constitution. Well, Bitcoin only does what it says it will do. Like it literally can't do anything more or anything less. It's just open source code that executes exactly as written, basically. So it almost has this, I don't want to use the word perfect, but near perfect form of integrity relative to every analog age social institution we've ever had. What does that mean for this pattern? Like if Bitcoin, you have it labeled, is it fourth turning money? But does that mean it's not useful in the first, second, third turning? Like how does Bitcoin affect this pattern?
Definitely. Yeah, tongue in cheek on fourth turning money. It was Bitcoin was born in 08, 09 with the GFC. At a time where no trust is here, we sort of outsource the trust. There's a lot of like chintzy parallels there, I would say. But how does it fit in? I think one is we need order and we need a social institution. Money always has been. I think this one is unique. We call it perfect or otherwise. It is unique. And I think in our climate now, we need something for the whole spectrum of political beliefs to latch onto. And Bitcoin doesn't know who's interacting with it. It can't censor a certain group of people because it doesn't even know who's using it, right? So it is an entirely neutral public infrastructure. And that's the type of social institution that we can all rally around. And so I'm bullish on that idea, properly understood. And over time, it's accelerating that understanding across society. Now, is it only in the fourth turning or is it a first turning money? Can it last long term? I think this is a really interesting question. I think let's start going backwards. If we're in a first turning, supply of order is high, demand is high. Pretty much society works. The middle class is rising, inequality is low, violence is down. Generally, things are good. There'd be no appetite for a wrench in the system, burn it all down, new money. Because let's be honest, trust is cheap. We want to, sorry, that's the wrong way to say it. Trust is expensive, but it's easier for society if we can just trust the institution.
Of course, yeah.
Right.
It's more efficient for us to just trust and not verification's costly.
That's right.
If we could just trust, that would be efficient. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when times are good, we don't need it theoretically. So in my opinion, Bitcoin could only emerge in a third or fourth turning.
Of course, has to.
It has to. It wouldn't be adopted.
Right.
Otherwise. And it can emerge in a third turning, but it wouldn't be adopted because we don't need
the pain.
We need the pain and we haven't realized we need a change yet. So it has to emerge and has to be adopted in the fourth turning. Now, the next question is Bitcoin, and I've been thinking about this, writing about this, totally unpublished, but is Bitcoin a 50-year money or a 500-year money? The numbers are arbitrary-ish, but if you look at the last 100 years, it's not just like gold standard fiat. There was fractions and like half steps along the way. Roughly every 30 to 50 years, we've redone it. Pre-Federal Reserve to Bretton Woods system, to gold standard, come off the gold standard to a petrodollar system, to whatever we're doing now. And so the question would be, does Bitcoin just buy us 50 years of monetary sovereignty? And in which case, would it be a good thing? Yes. But it's always an arms race here, right? Satoshi had a quote like, in the arms race against the encroaching state, Bitcoin will buy us some time. right? I think I'm a little more bullish on Satoshi, but it's the right question to ask
Yeah.
because Bitcoin could be a 50-year money, and then that as an institution decays. What if the hodlers of last resort, the self-sovereignty, the
Mhm.
self-custody element, 3 generations goes by and nobody understood the fight it took to save the money, to bring money back as a public good. And then we just let the culture
The demand
thing,
for order declines.
demand of order decline.
Yeah.
Bingo. And then we just let it fail. So I think there's a real chance for that.
Wow.
I also, and then you might ask how we preserve it. Do we go like the Catholic Church and have like a priesthood class that passes the secrets?
Yeah.
Do we do, I don't know. There's lots of historical ways to approach this. But what I don't know the answer. I don't have a strong opinion. But what I do strongly believe is this is the first monetary system that theoretically has a chance to go for 5,000 years or 500 years. I think gold would be the analog here, because gold is the thing on the planet we found that best acts as money. No wonder why it lasts so long. In a digital age, we have to discover the thing that is best suited as money, and I think it pretty clearly is Bitcoin. And if so, we might have this thing for many fourth turning cycles. Maybe through the stars, maybe through the next stage of humanity, if we can get off our rock. And that's pretty exciting to think about. But the future is not written. I think, in my opinion, the hardcore Bitcoiners who are probably bored of the day-to-day topical, myself included. I think the next fight is, okay, let's win this short-term battle. And I think we have a really good chance of it being $100 trillion asset or some version of like the bedrock of society. I think we have a good shot at that. But after that, how do we preserve the values? How do we make sure this thing doesn't decay when demand for order goes down?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and it sort of begs, it kind of begs a deeper analysis of the relationship between supply and demand, right? Because there is this economic incentive to maintain the orderliness or the integrity of Bitcoin as a social institution that is somewhat independent of demand for order. Like maybe everyone sucks drugs and rock and roll. That doesn't mean people are going to stop having demand for money or demand for, deploying capital into Bitcoin mining, right? There's still going to be financial incentives to do these things. So maybe that orderliness in the social institution of Bitcoin can persist despite a decline in demand for order. Maybe that could be the difference in this turning cycle versus past turning cycles. But
yeah, I think if I can piggyback off that, I think the way we would know is imagine a world where Bitcoin is, let's just say, the base layer of an economic monetary system. If let's just think about it, if demand goes down, what would change? Like, can Bitcoin be the bedrock of a monetary system? We don't know that yet.
Sure.
I think there's a good line of reasoning where it does, but I think that's what we'll find is as the tides shift, is it actually good money throughout time? Or are we fooling ourselves because the environment we are in, we demand this type of money?
Yeah.
And is it wartime money? I've heard people say that because it's very Spartan. It's very costly to verify. It's well engineered, but you would never pay the high cost of decentralization unless you needed it.
Yeah.
And so what that would mean to me is we have to like cement the base layer thing, and we have to build extreme amounts of abstraction on top of this. That's the only way it becomes a peacetime money as well, because otherwise it's too costly. Right. And I think we're on the way there. I think that we're nowhere near a mature state, but you see the machinations of this.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's so fascinating. This is great. I really do want to read this book. I think it sounds like it's right there with The Sovereign Individual in terms of bringing unique perspective on where we are in history. So thank you for writing this.
My pleasure.
Always good to talk to you. I
man.
think we should.
All right, guys and gals. Number one, it's Friday. Let's kick some ass. Number two, coffee. Let's kick some more ass. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Number two. Which one?
Thank you. And folks, you be the change you want to see. You lead by example. If you want people around you to kick ass, you got to kick some ass. And it will get contagious. It will be contagious. Kicking ass is contagious. So go out and spread the disease of kicking ass. Love you guys. I'll see you on Monday. Bye-bye.